Everybody in court thought this man was a killer, until 3 tiny pieces of evidence, a thread, a broken camera, and a child's one-word whisper, exposed the real murderer. This is how 3 small truths saved an innocent man from death. A quiet suburban neighborhood in Cedar Falls, Oregon jolted awake as flames swallowed the 2-story farmhouse at the end of Ridgewood Lane. Neighbors rushed out in pajamas, shouting, calling 911, pointing at the burning house as orange sparks shot into the sky like fireworks. Inside that house lived 3 people: Rebecca Gray, 37, schoolteacher; Liam Gray, 10, her son; Adrian Cole, 42, Rebecca's fiancé. When firefighters finally broke down the door, they found something worse than they expected. In the living room, next to a collapsed beam, lay Rebecca's body, burned motionless, dead. And beside her, a metal baseball bat covered in blood. The fire hadn't killed her. Someone had murdered her first. And within 2 hours, they had a suspect, her fiancé, Adrian Cole. He was arrested before sunrise, hands shaking, clothes burned at the sleeves, and eyes full of shock he couldn't explain. The media called him the Firehouse Killer, the monster of Ridgewood Lane, the groom who killed his bride. And the evidence seemed ironclad. At least, that's what everyone believed. Until 3 pieces of evidence, 3 unlikely, fragile fragments of truth, saved him. Detective Laura Mason had solved 38 homicides in 12 years. She believed 2 things strongly. 1. People lie. 2-point evidence doesn't. And all the evidence pointed to Adrian. When she entered the interrogation room, he was sitting there with his head down, wrists handcuffed, soot on his face, dried tears around his eyes. "Mr. Cole," she said coldly, "your fiancé is dead. Someone smashed her skull and then burned the house. All signs point to you." He lifted his head slowly. "I didn't kill Rebecca," he whispered. Every detective hears that line. Laura ignored it. "You argued earlier that night. Neighbors heard shouting. She called 911 2 weeks ago, claiming you were losing control." "That call wasn't about us," Adrian insisted. "It was about her ex-husband. He had threatened—" "Stop," Laura cut in. "We found your fingerprints on the bat." Adrian froze. "Because Liam asked me to fix the grip last week. It's his bat." Laura pushed photographs across the table. The bat, the blood, the flame-blackened living room. "Your story makes no sense," she said. "Give me one reason, one, to believe you didn't do this." Adrian stared back at her and whispered, "Because I loved her." Laura looked at him with no sympathy. "Everyone loves the person they kill," she said, and walked out. By morning, the DA filed first-degree murder with aggravated arson, a death penalty case. The lawyer who didn't believe him. Attorney Daniel York was known for one thing: getting hopeless cases thrown out. He visited Adrian in jail 3 days later. "I'll be honest," York said, dropping a thick stack of police reports on the table. "This looks terrible." "I know," Adrian whispered, "but I didn't do it." York sighed. "Every man charged with killing his fiancée tells me that. But lies fall apart in court. So tell me, was she cheating on you? Were you fighting over money?" "No," Adrian said desperately. "She was scared of her ex-husband, Mark. Said he was following her." York paused. "Is that in the police report?" "No, because she didn't want Liam to know." York leaned back. Something flickered in his face. "Curiosity." "Okay," he said slowly. "Let's pretend for a moment that you're telling the truth. Then someone else killed her. Someone who knew the layout of your home. Someone who could get inside without waking neighbors. Someone who wanted you blamed. And someone who set the fire," Adrian added. York nodded. "Fine," he said. "Let's start digging." He didn't know it yet. But the entire case, Adrian's life, would come down to 3 tiny slivers of evidence buried in chaos. The torn blue thread. 2 weeks later, York returned to the burned remains of the house. Police had already tagged everything, but York wasn't a man who trusted other people's eyes. Near the back window, he found something unusual: a single blue thread caught on a nail. It didn't match anything Adrian owned. It didn't match Rebecca's clothing. He bagged it and sent it to a private lab. 3 days later, the report arrived. Thread composition and dye pattern matched the uniform of a private security agency. Which agency? Iron Key Security. And who worked at Iron Key? Mark Walden, Rebecca's ex-husband, the man she feared. A man with a documented history of violence. York felt adrenaline shoot through him. This wasn't proof. Not yet. But it was the first crack in the open and shut case. The silent camera. The second piece of evidence wasn't found in the house. It was found across the street. A small doorbell camera belonging to an elderly couple, the Sanders. The police had marked it useless because the fire's heat had warped the drive. York sent the damaged SD card to a recovery lab. They salvaged 4 seconds of footage, 4 blurry, shaky seconds showing a tall man in a dark blue security uniform approaching the house at 1:59 a.m., 15 minutes before the fire started. The man wasn't Adrian. His gait, height, and silhouette were completely different. It wasn't perfectly clear. It wasn't enough to identify the face. But it proved someone else was there. Someone the police never looked for. Someone who entered the house 2 minutes before Rebecca stopped answering her phone. York stared at the footage, heart pounding. This was the second truth. Small, faint, almost invisible, but real. And the case was starting to collapse. The child who wouldn't speak. 10-year-old Liam Gray hadn't spoken a word since the night his mother died. Doctors said it was trauma-induced mutism. The prosecution planned to avoid putting him on the stand. York, however, had a suspicion. He visited Liam with Rebecca's sister's permission. The boy sat on the couch hugging a stuffed dinosaur. York knelt beside him. "Liam, I don't want to scare you. I just want to know, did you see who hurt your mom?" Liam's eyes filled with tears. He whispered one word. Just one. "Blue." York felt his skin turn cold. "Blue what, buddy? Blue clothes?" Liam nodded slowly. "Blue badge?" Another nod. York showed him a police photograph of Adrian's clothing that night. "Was it these clothes?" he asked. Liam shook his head violently. York then printed out the Iron Key security uniform from their website. He placed it in front of the boy. Liam froze, then burst into tears and hugged York tightly. York closed his eyes. There it was. The third piece of evidence. Not physical, but powerful. The testimony of the only witness who saw the killer. And it wasn't Adrian. The courtroom was packed as trial began. Reporters everywhere, news trucks outside. Hashtags trending. Firehouse Killer, you, justice for Rebecca. Everyone expected an easy conviction. Then York stood up. "With the court's permission," he said, "the defense presents 3 critical pieces of evidence that the investigation ignored." The jury leaned forward. Exhibit A, the blue thread. "The thread," York said, holding the evidence bag up, "belongs to Iron Key Security, employer of Mark Walden, the victim's ex-husband." A murmur swept the courtroom. Exhibit B, the camera footage. The 4-second footage played on the large screen. A man in a blue uniform walking toward the house. "Not Adrian," the audience gasped. Exhibit C, Liam's testimony. York called Liam to the stand. The boy trembled, clutching his dinosaur. York knelt so they were eye level. "Liam," he asked softly, "did your mom's killer wear blue?" A tiny nod. "Was it Adrian?" Liam shook his head. Then he pointed at a printed photo of an Iron Key uniform. "He looked like this," Liam whispered. The courtroom went silent, absolutely silent. Even the judge leaned back. The prosecution collapsed in real time, and then the impossible happened. The judge dismissed all charges. Adrian Cole was free, not because of luck, but because of 3 pieces of evidence the police ignored. A thread, a broken camera, a child's single word. Truth had survived. Just barely. Epilogue: The real killer. 3 months later, police finally arrested Mark Walden. He had fled Oregon, changed his appearance, and tried to cross into Canada. DNA from his jacket matched the blue thread. Cell tower records placed him near the house that night. And his own co-worker testified that Mark hated Rebecca's new fiancé. When detectives confronted him with the evidence, he confessed. Rebecca had tried to get full custody of Liam. Mark couldn't accept it. He went to the house that night to threaten her. He brought a bat. He panicked. And everything spiraled. Adrian visited Rebecca's grave every Sunday. He still wore her ring. He still kept Liam's dinosaur on the mantle. Detective Laura Mason later apologized to him, tears in her eyes. "I should have looked deeper," she admitted. Adrian didn't hate her. He hated the system that almost killed him, because if not for 3 small fragments of truth, he would have died for a crime he didn't commit. And so the town of Cedar Falls would never forget. Sometimes justice survives on threads, fragments, whispers, and sometimes those are enough to save an innocent man. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heart-touching stories.